I may have been wrong about Verona. This is me being accountable. I may have been wrong about Verona. Now, it's still early in the Lega Volley semifinals, but if you go back to the preview I did for the Lega Volley this year, I was questioning Verona's moves in the offseason. I was questioning if getting guys like Darlin and Micah Christensen were actually going to move the needle for them, was actually going to help them get over that hump and become one of the elite teams in the Lega Volley. And now, after game one of the Lega Volley semifinals against Lube Civitanova, I'm going to admit it. I may have been wrong. Now, I thought this series was going to be spicy. I thought this series was going to be entertaining. I thought this series was going to be a battle. Now, once again, it's still only game one. It could very much be the case. But after game one, I'm really starting to doubt almost everything that I've said before. Verona was very, very good. Lube, not so much. We had a good match for about the first half of the first set. The first point was outstanding, and then after about the first half of the first set, everything went downhill. It went from 19-14 in favor of Lube to Verona just basically taking control. They won the first 34-32 and then ran away with it the rest of the match, winning the next two 25-21, 25-21 for a game 1-3 dong. So I'm going to break things down here a little bit into 6 different things that I saw from this match. First and foremost, Verona's offense was really, 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 really good. Micah Christensen was in his bag, and he had all of his weapons at his disposal. They were 62% hitting with a 47% efficiency as a team on Sunday. Also, their first ball side out rate was a 57.1%. They were just outstanding in first ball side out. The middles were 100% on the evening. They were a full 9 for 9, and Micah was just toying with Lube's middles all evening long. Very rarely did Verona swing at any hands in front of him when they were swinging out of the middle. And Micah was spreading that ball around perfectly. 9 sets to the middle. Keita got 22. Darlin and Mozic got 17 each. That's as, pretty perfect coverage on the toast as you can get it. And a lot of it came down to their passing. Verona, who has been one of the worst passing teams throughout this regular season, was very, very good in serve receive on Sunday against Lube, one of the best serving teams in the regular season. So they really swapped positions there. Verona passed 50% positive and 25% perfect as a team. Impressive. But a lot of it comes down to Matteo Staffarini, a midseason pickup as libero who was 58% positive and 29% perfect on 24 targets, which represented 43% of the serve receives for Verona. He was so strong, and it just allowed Micah to run the offense. It just allowed the fact that there was very little stress on any of the Verona hitters from the Lube serve, and they just ran the offense and got to go. Now, the second thing that was incredible for Verona in this match was their serving. Their serving was outstanding. 9 aces for 20 errors, just under 1 ace per every 2 errors, which is incredible. 7 different players scored aces in this match. 7 different players, which is huge, right? Keita had 3, and then you had 6 other guys come up with aces throughout this match. Pretty damn good. They kept the best serving team in the league to just 31% positive and 8% perfect passing. That's part of the big reason that Lube's first ball side out rate was just a 41.9. A stark difference from Verona's at a 57.1. Only almost a 20% point difference between these two teams in first ball side out. Now, when you look at the scoring from this team, it was very balanced, very even. 15 for Keita, 13 for Darlin, 11 for Mozic, 8 for Aiden Zingle down the middle, 4 for Marco Vitelli. And once again, the middles were 9 for 9. Just simply perfect down the middle. As a team, they only made 2 unforced errors on the evening, and they were perfectly unblemished. That's why they dominated. If you had to find some holes in Verona's game, it would come down to their blocking and defense. Not that it was a big issue for them, because their serving and first ball side out was simply outstanding. Not only did they make less stuff blocks than Lube, 5 compared to Lube's 8, their good touch percentage was also much lower at a 24.2 compared to Lube's 46.4%. So a big difference there in good touch percentage. And on top of this, they had a higher block error rate at a 42.4% versus Lube's 39.3. Now, if Lube is going to be better in serve receive, which we're going to assume that they are for game number 2, this is a stat that they're going to need to be a little bit better in. They don't need to be at Lube's level, but a little bit better would help quite a bit. And on the defensive side, they made less digs, 10 compared to 14, and they're also converting only 15% of their digs into points, whereas Lube is converting 17.4% of their digs into points. So Lube is making more digs and converting more of their digs into scoring opportunities. So that would be one of the small areas that Verona needs to be better in. But if they can serve the ball like they did in game 1 and attack in first ball side out like they did in game 1, then Bob's your uncle. On the other side of the net, Lube, as you could already tell, lost this game in the first phase. They lost this game in serve and pass. No doubt about it, right? Their serving was abysmal, if you could say that. 3 aces on 20 errors. As I said, like, Verona's serve receivers had an absolute field day. But for me, it's the fact that you're serving 24 serves, 43% of your serves, to the libero on the other team, where it seemed to me like Lube understood the assignment in the regular season. Right? Even if you look back at to Milano's 1 win against Verona in the quarterfinals, there is a very clear pattern that you need to follow. You need to serve the ball to Nomori Keita. Simply done. Right? Game 1, which Lube won 3-0. Keita had 19 targets, which is 32% of the targets for Verona. That was the most of any player on his team. He was 11 in 26 in attacking with a 23% efficiency. In game 2, where he only passed for a set and a half because they ended up taking out Darlin for Sani, and Sani passed even though he was on the right side. He had 16 targets, and he was 12 for 24 with a 25% efficiency. And it's the same thing in game 3 against Milano in the quarterfinals, right? He had 36% of the targets, which was 37% of the total serve receive targets. And he was 25 for 41 with a 41% overall efficiency, but you could tell that he was gassed. Now, you're not serving Keita because he's the worst passer. In fact, the worst passer in game 1 would have been Rock Mozic. But you're serving him because he needs to touch the ball more. You need to tire him out. Much like Warszawa did with Leon against Lublin in the quarterfinals of the Champions League just a couple weeks ago. You need to give him as much volume so you tire him out. That's exactly what happened in game 2 between Verona and Lube in the regular season, is that even though Keita was no longer featured in the serve receive and they were bringing Sani in, his mental game was no longer there. If they're going to have any chance at all, hell, even if you go after Mozic and you're trying to go after the weaker passer, you cannot just let Verona's serve receivers and their front row attackers, their left side attackers, off the hook, especially when you got a guy like Nomori Keita who is, still in his first year as being an outside attacker. On the other side of the ball, passing was abysmal. Aced 10 times, or they had 10 passing errors, aced 9 times. 31% positive and 8% perfect. And unfortunately, it comes down to 2 of their best passers, 2 of the guys they've really relied on all year long to really get the job done. Fabian Balasso, 19% positive and 6% perfect on 16 targets. He was aced twice. Last year when he got injured, we were calling Balasso one of the most important liberos and one of the best liberos in the world. And so far this series, he's been an absolute ghost of himself. Right? Does Lube have to bring in Bisotto? I mean, it's not my call, but it's definitely an option that they need to look at. And on the other guy, Mattia Bottolo, who has been one of the best passers in the Lega Volley this year, also terrible. 36% positive, 8% perfect, not terrible, but aced 5 times. 5 times he was aced. Now, this is just not good enough from the best passing team in the Lega Volley this season. Not good enough at all for Lube. And it is at the heart, right? Their serving and their passing is at the heart of their struggles in this match. And now it has been the struggles for the past 3 matches. This is 3 straight losses for Lube, including the 2 in Champions League to Zavierci. Might I remind you as well that if it wasn't for Micheletto and Lavia being injured for Trentino, they probably wouldn't even be here, right? They would not have made it out of the first round. The next thing for Lube, offensively, they cannot play Nikolov ball. They just simply can't. Nikolov had 28 attempts in this match. He was 17 for 28, which honestly, not that bad. Not that bad at all. He hit a 61%, which is pretty ridiculous, right? You cannot put the blame here on Alex Nikolov whatsoever. He did everything he could. Sure, two of his errors really came in bad moments, late in that first set when they were battling it out, and that first set would have made a world of difference, but you cannot blame it on Alex Nikolov. Anyone blaming Alex Nikolov anywhere should just shut up. Just shut up. They cannot play Nikolov ball, right? Nikolov got 28 attempts. Lepke and Botolo combined had 27. Lepke was 7 for 12 with a 41% efficiency. Most of those sets came in the second set when Orduna came into set. Botolo, 8 for 15 with a 20% efficiency. Not the best. Now, the worst of all of this is, as I said, Lube was leading for the first half of this first set. There was a point where they were up 19-14. And that's when they were spreading the ball around. At 19-14, this is how the offense and the scoring was for Lube. Botolo had 4 kills. He was 4 for 4. Right? He scored his fourth at 18-14 for Lube. Nikolov had 3, and he also had 2 blocks. Lepke had 2, and Gargiulo had 1, and Tahir had 1. So at this point, at 19-14, when this team is being successful, they're spreading the ball around. Botolo, as I mentioned, 4 for 4 to start the match. In the first set, he was 6 for 8 with 2 errors. He did, however, miss a crucial overpass at 32-32. 32-32, Tahir crushes a serve. It comes right back to Botolo, way too far back, and he puts that ball out. It gives it 33-32 in favor of Verona. Nikolov misses a tough shot right after that to give it 34-32 in favor of Verona. But after that, Botolo, right as I said, he was 4 for 4, hit his last ball at 18-14. He didn't see the ball again until 26-25. Same thing with Gargiulo. Gargiulo was 3 for 5 in the first. And his last set was at 2019. He didn't see the ball again until the third set. So as soon as things started getting tight, right, what happened, after 19-14 is that Plinicic came in, went on a bit of a serving run. Darlin served an ace-2, and Lube tightened up. And then Bonifonte just went to Nikolov ball. Where he's putting 41% of the offense on one player. And it just became way too obvious. Way too obvious. Now, they've shown it. In the times in the past when they've beaten Verona, because now the season series is at 2-2, they've spread that ball around. And the times that they lost, they haven't. It's pretty simple. Nikolov is outstanding. But even if you want to go back to the World Championships and what he was able to do for Bulgaria this summer, right? One of the biggest things that Moni learned over the summer while playing in the VNL and brought into the World Championships was the fact that if you play off Alex and use your other guys, you're going to be able to generate points. That's where the rest of the team really stepped up. And for this Lube team, they're really not expected to do that. At all. So the fact is Lube cannot match Verona's power. They can't. So they need to switch it up and play differently. They need to play off of Nikolov. He's outstanding out of system 100%. So if he's outstanding out of system, then you can't give him every ball in system as well. You need to go to your other guys like they did early on in the match. And then they need to execute from the baseline with a clear serving plan. It's very obvious that serving Staffarini is just not it. And they need to have better receive. That is ridiculous. That is very, very, very clear. The 3 Bs to being better for Lube Civitanova are Botolo, Bonifonte, and Balasso. These 3 guys need to be better. That is the long and short of it. Botolo was very clearly very rattled after he missed that ball at 32-32. Balasso needs to start making some plays. He wasn't terrible on defense, but he didn't make any game-changing plays. He didn't make a big dig that left me, my jaw open. And he 100% needs to solidify this serve receive. 100% needs to solidify this serve receive. He needs to take some space away from guys like Nikolov and Lepke, who weren't terrible. Nikolov's passing numbers weren't great, and Lepke's were okay. But Balasso needs to be better, especially if he's going to be targeted 16 times. Same thing with Botolo. And then finally, Bonifonte cannot just turn and play Nikolov ball. He just can't. He needs to use the rest of this team. Right? The fact that Eric Lepke was only used 12 times when you've got Botolo with a terrible efficiency, and you got Nikolov, who's working his ass off, is just a crying shame. Right? This was a match where Verona outplayed Lube in so many areas of the game, but one of the biggest areas that it was the most apparent was how Micah ran his offense versus how Boniface ran his offense. And you know what? That might be one of the most biggest glaring issues that Lube might not be able to change. Now, Boniface has been here before. This is a team that came back down 0-2 last year to Perugia in the semifinals of the Scudetto playoffs. But we're going to need to see a much different Lube team up here and in here, right? Their head and their hearts need to be in it much bigger than they were in game one. Luckily for game number 2, they will be headed back home. We know how terrible Lube has been on the road this year, but still, something's got to change for Lube, or else this is going to be a very quick series.